Welcome to the University of Oklahoma's launch event, sharing the vision of the Strategic Plan Refresh.
Long before Oklahoma became a state, this university stood as a bold promise. A place where education would open doors and shape the future. From the beginning, our story has always been one of courage, innovation, and limitless possibility. For generations, OU has fueled progress, not just for ourselves, but for our state and far beyond. And we've proven that success doesn't happen by chance. It happens when knowledge meets action, when ambition meets purpose. Higher education has never been more important to Oklahoma's future. The world is changing, and we can't sit still. At OU, we don't wait for the future. We create it. We're not just moving forward, we're leading the way. Momentum has brought us here, but what comes next is up to us. To push further, dream bigger, and redefine what's possible for OU and all of Oklahoma. This is our moment. This is our purpose. Together, we will shape a future without limits. Together, we will lead on.
Please welcome the 15th President of the University of Oklahoma, Joseph Harris, Jr.
Hey, thank you all. Appreciate you being here. This is the first of its kind, and hopefully it won't be the last based on my performance. I've got the Brittany headgear working. It's remarkably uncomfortable, not just for you, but also for me, so don't think you're alone. Want to start off by thanking a few people. We're not going to do a lot of thanking today because everyone should feel like they're a part of this and know how grateful we are. I want to thank the student musicians who were playing earlier, the OU Jazz Exchange. Let's hear it for them. And then, when this was first envisioned, we talked about announcing the launch of the refresh of the Lead On Strategic Plan. I never thought it would look like this. Let's hear it for the university events team. They're incredible. They even sprung for donuts. That's how extravagant this is. Hey, it's amazing to see everyone here, and getting up in front of this group, sort of the awkward stage and the headset. I had this flashback to, and I was sitting there realizing that it was one of my most uncomfortable moments to date. I continue to have them. I came here in November of '94, and I was asked to go speak to the staff at the Health Sciences Center, an all-staff awards event, which is this time of year. So it was 30 years ago, almost to the week. I'd been at OU for about 5 or 6 months, and I was asked to address the staff and tell them how much we appreciated them. And I got in front of them, and I said, "Thank you for all you do." I had no idea what they did. And so I repeated, "What you do every day, all day, thank you." And I had no idea what they did. I didn't know, the IRB from the NBA, right? I had no idea of the scope, the breadth, the complexity, and the depth of what happens at a comprehensive research university that has an academic health system as a part of it. And I didn't realize what each one of those words means and how meaningful it is. And as I came into this role 6 years ago, I started thinking about, and the first question I asked, and you could tell how excited they were to get me because I wasn't the president the first time. That didn't go well for me, or you. That was kind of funnier than that. And then the second step, it all happened late at night. And the next morning, there was about 5 hours to prepare. I sat down with the executive teams, the deans and the executive officers, and the question I asked for those that were there was, what's our strategy? And each of us, had been dean of the College of Law, we had what resembles a strategy, in some cases a pretty good one, in some cases a bit more anemic, but nobody in the room could articulate what the university strategy was. They couldn't articulate what the campus strategy was as a component of that. And to me, that was stunning and telling. And we also couldn't articulate where we as a university fit with the role of the state and our community partners. It was as though we were operating on an island and we didn't have a macro plan to guide us. And so hopefully what you will get from this is, as you think about this strategic plan, is that you will see not just our strategy, not just the next step in our strategic plan, but hopefully you'll see you. If you don't see you, come see me. And I actually mean that. A lot of time goes in these. And everyone, to make a strategic plan actually work, requires all of us. Not just our 4 campuses. You probably left out online when you thought I said 4 campuses. But also our community partners and the state that we live in and the national broader context. That's the only way we can make the impact. Because what's our purpose? That's right. Nobody leaves until we all chant, "We change lives." I've already locked the door, which is uncomfortable as well. That's our purpose. Now think about that purpose. Last night, Dr. George Henderson, 92 years old, gave his last lecture. His last lecture. He came here in 1967. 58 years here. Took a little to get to the podium, and he delivered it with power and passion. And he talked about his life. And it was a life where he changed lives. And when I've told my kids as they've grown up what I'm doing for a living and why I can't be at certain things, I get to tell them that I'm part of a purpose that involves us changing lives. And it's not me changing lives, it's we change lives. It's all of us together, and every single person is critical to that happening. Nobody is more important than the other. When you look at the strategic plan, it goes top to bottom and bottom to top. It goes from our purpose all the way down to all of our tactics. But it runs both directions. And hopefully, essentially, you see yourself in that and you see the role that you're playing in that. That's the formula. And when you think about how do you achieve, how do we not waste our time? How do we not waste our opportunity? The formula is clear. You've got to have a strategic plan. You have to have incredible people that are bought into it. You have to have a way to execute at scale. And you've got to find a way to measure it. If you can't measure it, you have no way of knowing if you're succeeding or failing. Just doing stuff doesn't change lives with the impact we have if we are disciplined and structured and we measure our successes, and when we have a failure, we're big enough to admit it and change course. That's the whole idea behind having a strategic plan. It's our North Star. It tells us where we're going. It tells us why we're doing what we're doing, why we come to work every day, and why what we're doing we are so beyond blessed to be a part of. How many people in the history of the human race have been able to do more than try and subsist, let alone be in a job where you've got a purpose as profound as changing lives? I think about it every time I get frustrated or upset, which is like every 6 to 8 minutes. All right, let's do a little bit of context before we go into the strategic plan itself. Context-wise, 2019 was an interesting time. Was anybody here during 2019? That's right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how fun was it? Yeah. There was a lot going on, and there wasn't just a lot going on at the university in terms of drama in terms of financial concerns in other areas, but there was a lot happening, not coincidentally, in fact, directly related. There was a lot going on with this systemic disruption of higher education. People didn't want to admit that higher education is like every other industry. It had been disrupted clearly by 2019. 30% of universities were operating at an operating loss. They were spending more money than they were bringing in. They had levered up their balance sheets because nobody wanted to admit that higher education had changed structurally. That's a theme in terms of how we achieve changing lives, and that is to be intellectually honest enough to recognize when there's been fundamental change and whether or not we've truly adapted to it. I have learned one thing that is crystal clear. People hate change. They do. Everybody says they like it. Very few people like it. And people that don't know what to do continue doing what they know how to do, which is not useful when there's fundamental change that's taken place. And 2019 was one of those moments, and if we had a lot more time, I'd walk you through all of it. But let me give you a few of the highlights of what we did and how that leads into this next phase of the strategic plan. We went in, we spent a year working with our board, working across campus, not with consultants, to bring in an out-of-the-box strategic plan, but we put together our own internally. And the board passed it in March of 2020. That date's important because they passed it, and then an hour later we had to cancel the Big 12 basketball tournament because of COVID. And then we went on spring break and we shut the campus down. So the minute we launched the strategic plan 1.0, we had a global pandemic we hadn't seen in 100 years. That's important for context as we talk about in a minute where we are right now with this refresh of the strategic plan. Because you think that would absolutely make non-viable the strategic plan that you put in place. And there were big things happening. We knew as we launched this strategic plan that in higher education, there was going to be an enrollment cliff in 2025. The number of people attending college was going to be going down. And it all came true. We knew and we were honest about what those headwinds were. Now, how'd we do? How'd we do as we go through that? Financially, let's start, and let's be clear. This first 1.0 strategic plan, it first didn't include Health Sciences Center or Tulsa or online. It couldn't include the health-related fields because as you look at what an academic health system does, if the clinical engine, the patient-seeing part, isn't working, it's not viable. And it was fundamentally broken. And we could not put together a strategy for the Health Sciences Center because we didn't have a viable structure in place. So let's start with Norman Campus. And I'm taking way too much time, so I'm going to speed this up. When we looked at it, we went from a position of financial peril to one of financial strength. What's been done Norman Campus during the last 5 years is truly remarkable. I'll summarize it. We can go through it in detail, but it was at risk. The board, everybody involved, we cut $140 million in costs. We hadn't given but 2 raise programs in 8 years. We've done 3 raise programs in the last 3 years. We have increased our cash reserves by $200 million on Norman Campus alone, and we are now on really great financial footing because everybody here worked for it and worked together. Health Sciences Center, it's a massive story. If you don't know it, and it's not one that is immediately easily communicated because it's a sort of a complex structure, but the bottom line is it was structurally broken and it wasn't going to work. We had to engage, it took 3 years to restructure it because it wasn't just us. It was the healthcare authority and people hated the change. We went from the clinical engine heading towards bankruptcy. It was in real peril. After 3 years of restructuring, we finally merged it together into a single structure, and what happened? That was 3.5 years ago. 3.5 years ago, it was only in Oklahoma City effectively. It had $1.5 billion in top line and about 1 to 2% EBITDA. Not a good formula, and a whole bunch of debt. 3.5 years later, we've gone from $1.5 billion to about $3.3 billion top line, and from 1% margins to 10.5% margins. And putting money under the way it was restructured, a material amount for the first time into research that goes into saving lives. So that's a proxy. We could go through all of this. We've made the average cost for students to go to OU, if you're an Oklahoman, over the last 5 years. It's down by 28%, and you all have heard me talk about that. The average cost for a student to go to OU during this time period. Our research is hitting an unbelievable stride, 4th fastest growing in the country for large research universities. We could spend the entire hour talking about it. But what we have done is fundamentally important, and it is a national story going on right now, and everybody here contributed to it. I would like to spend more time on that. Time is not my friend. Affordability is critical. We restructured how we do fundraising. We thought we were good at it before. Remember all those conversations? We were raising on average $135 million a year. We restructured, spun it out to the foundation. We're now raising $330 to $350 million a year. We've got $500 million targeted to go towards helping students attend OU, $250 million towards faculty excellence. Big changes, big difference. And what's the secret to all of this? You can look at it and go through it, but the absolute secret is we. It's you. There's a quick video on this. All right. So 2.0, the refresh of the strategic plan. Just a little bit of context for it that will hopefully be useful. We spent a year working on this. Hopefully every one of you was involved in this. We had all kinds of committees and groups and strategic working groups and all of the things. So if you think about it, if you think about our first version of this and now the refresh in the last 6 years, we've spent 2 years thinking deeply about how we fulfill our purpose and how all of it is in there. I'm not going to call out a bunch of names. Appreciate Jim Morrison, appreciate Jill Raines, Sarah Ellis. They had big leadership roles, but all of you were involved in it. Now, what is it? I would ask you, because I'm not going to cover it all, or you would never get home for dinner tonight. But here's what's in it. Macro, there's one purpose, which is, it's so weak. I'll be honest, I may leave the stage. I'm so disappointed. There'll be other opportunities. So there's one purpose, There's 5 pillars. We're going to briefly cover each of those 5 pillars, but underneath it, there are 26 strategies. And underneath that, there are 121 tactics. For everyone who's a part of the University of Oklahoma ecosystem, our partners, state, local, county, every one of the members of the team, of the OU team writ large, ou.edu/lead on. It is thoughtful, and you will see yourself in there. A lot of time was spent making sure, hopefully, that we captured that. So when you think about how we change lives, there's 3 things the state can do, if you really think about it. They can provide the greatest ladder of economic and social mobility, which is an education. They can provide an education. They can provide economic opportunity, and they can provide for the health of a state. We're not sufficient to do it alone, but we are essential. And so as we think about how we change lives, it's not just our students, but it's the state, the region, and of course, based on the research, the global impact that we have. So that's how we thought about it in this strategic plan. We talked about the tailwinds, how well the first strategic plan went. One of the things I love talking about is to do anything useful, you've got to start off with being honest. Before you can be bold and before you can be clear-eyed, you've got to be honest about what are those headwinds that you face. And in this, I'm going to call out a few of them, but of course there are more. To be clear, we didn't expect a global pandemic last time, so this list is not exhaustive and certainly not in priority of concern. But it's increased competition for fewer students. The 2025 dearth in number of students going is real. The sentiment towards higher education that is negative and questioning whether it's actually of value is this fascinating paradox, because we're down 2 million students nationwide right now, but all the indicators indicate that by 2030, we're going to need 8 more million than we're currently supplying. So it's a fascinating paradox, but it's very real because many students are not going. Now, we've grown in a way that's stunning. We never predicted it under 1.0. We said if we could grow 2% a year, that'd be amazing. And we did it. We grew 2% and then 3%. And then out of nowhere, I think because of you and us being disciplined and having a macro view of what we are to be, this highest value public research university with an academic health system, we didn't grow 2%, we grew 20% the last 2 years in our freshman class. As a university as a whole, we grew more last year than we had in 50 years. So we've countered the trend. And right now, Jeff Bolanek says we're up another 8 to 9% for this incoming freshman class. So we're counter trend, but we've got to address the reality of what's out there and not get, as my friend now Chancellor Sean Burridge says, not drunk on our own wine. Competition for top-tier faculty and staff, especially as we're now on the radar of so many schools. They're coming after our best. We have to make sure we retain them and that we move aggressively towards that. We have low state funding. We've had great one-time funding the last few years. The state could not have been more supportive. But if you look at our state funding on average per student, we are at 58%. We're 58% less than those in the Big Four athletic conferences that are publics. We're at 79% less on a per student funding than the public AAUs, which we'll talk more about in a minute. And the states that have cracked the code on this are Texas and Florida. On a per student basis, we're actually 4 times lower than Texas and Florida. That's a headwind we have to address, and we're working hard on that. Federal actions related to universities right now. If you looked at anything in the last 24 hours, you've seen more activity around that. I know there's lots of anxiety on overhead rates for federal research and a lot of other issues. The biggest issue, I think, if you were to categorize them, is cultural polarization. I think it's the biggest threat that we face, making us hate each other. It's real, it's evident, and universities that should and I believe must be the place where you can engage in honest disagreements and explore and figure out not what to think, but how to think and be challenged by big ideas on all sides of the spectrum. could go from places that are fertile soil to absolutely being war zones for the culture war. We've got to watch that and work on that. I think it's the biggest risk that we face. All right, let's talk about briefly each one of these pillars. And I'm not going to do it justice because each of these pillars has hundreds of hours of thought in them. And so as I thought about how do I talk about them, there wasn't a good answer. So I'm going to try and just skate across the top of this and hope that you'll explore it on your own. The pillar one, they're doing some fancy stuff up here. Watch this. Boom. That's right. That's right. They kind of killed it, I think. So this is pillar 1 of 5, which is lead as a top-tier public research university. There is so much in each of those words that I'm not going to do it justice, but here's what we're doing. When we think about our overall strategy, macro, it's to be the highest value public research university in the country. As a flagship. Now, there are 4,000 universities in the country. There are 40 just in Oklahoma, but we're a state flagship. We're one of 50, if you know there are 50 states. If you don't, this could be the wrong room for you. That's right, there's the 2 at any rate, for those thinking 48. But everything we do has to be focused on excellence. Value, as we define it, is excellence and affordability. One without the other completely destroys our strategic plan. There are places in Oklahoma where they're free, where nobody pays if they're from the region, and they're down 20-25%. It doesn't get you there. Or you can be so expensive that you can't afford to go to it, and then it's not accessible. So as we look at our strategic plans, we look at this first pillar, what hopefully you'll see inside of this, clear objective measures to get to be one of the public AAUs. There are 71 AAUs, a little more than half are public, and we want to be in that group. You got to be invited in, but we're going to meet the standards. That's our goal in this next 5 years. This next tranche, this refresh of the strategic plan. How do you do it? There are 5 strategies, and there's a bunch of tactics that come underneath it. But part of this across all of our campuses is to engage in 300 strategic faculty hires. We have to have the staff also to make sure they're empowered. There aren't many places doing this. This is a huge opportunity. If we can execute on this and do it efficiently and make sure we're insisting on those metrics of productivity that demonstrate true excellence, we are in a unique position to get this done, and that's critical to it. We've got to double down on value. We've got to raise that $500 million for student support to make sure it's available. We need the state's help to get just below average among that first group, where I told you we're 58% down. We need $75 million on a continuing basis just for Norman campus. Interestingly enough, our ask to the state legislature this year is $75 million. That's how I feel about it. That is also the response from a number of state legislators. So will it happen in 1 year? It'd be amazing if it happened this year, but that's part of the bargain. For us to get there, our students, we've had 3 years of regular tuition increases, tried to offset it for those that couldn't afford it. We've got to have that. We've got to have the state's participation, and we have to have our donors kicking in. Funding this is critical. What I haven't talked about that really is part of the secret sauce is our strategic plan budget. We live by it. We have to live by it. We cannot waste dollars. They've got to be efficient. We have to grow enrollment, and growing enrollment is really important. It's important because when you think about service to the state, and you look at what's holding Oklahoma back as it relates to one of those 3, which is economic opportunity and prosperity, every consultant, you can pay what you want, will tell you the same thing. There's one statistic that holds Oklahoma back, and it's not how much they're incentivizing companies. There's a fine job of that being done. It's what percent of your population, of your workforce, has a 4-year bachelor's degree or higher. We're 30% below the national average. It's not okay. It's the reason the governor came out and said you've got to get to 40,000 students at OU and OSU. We are 100% committed to that. 80% of the healthcare workforce in Oklahoma comes from the OU Health Sciences Center. 5 years ago, we checked on that, had a little problem. Population had grown. We had actually decreased our production of graduates by 15%, and we didn't even know it. It was during the pandemic. Within 3 years, we doubled the number of nurses. They were unbelievable. A number of them are here. I'd love to call out people and embarrass you all. It's been incredible. They doubled the number of nurses in 3 years during the pandemic, from 300 graduating a year to over 600. When we look at online, the past 5 years, we doubled it to 5,000 students online. Pretty good sized campus. We're going to double it again to 10,000. We benchmark ourselves against the top 5 in the SEC. Hard benchmark, hard number, a lot of lives changed. 10,000 in the next 5 years. Sunham guarantees it. So that's what we have to do. Now, and again, look at the pillar. There's so much in there. Pillar 2, it's going to change again. It's pretty exciting. I've watched it like 3 times. Right? It says empower, doesn't it? That's what I'm talking about. I feel very powerful and, in fact, empowered. It's all about students, right? It's the second of 5 pillars. And when we think about whose lives we change, it's an entire state. It's going from one of the least healthiest states to a healthier state, but fundamentally it's about our students. And this pillar surrounds our students, and it lays out with objective measures how we prepare our students for a life of success and meaning and impact. And it truly surrounds the student. There are measures on every indication of how they can be successful as a student and beyond. I talked about doubling the career staff, right? So each one of these speaks to those. It's about having unique experiences. When you look at our 5 pillars, as you memorize these in real time and never forget them, what you'll realize is that the first and the 5th speak directly to academic excellence. The other 3 are contained around this idea of developing the whole person. So curricular excellence, extracurricular excellence by objective measures for each one of those, co-curricular excellence. In here, we're looking at signature experiences that you can only get at OU. They're hard drive experiences. It's where you see athletics. In fact, you'll see athletics in a number of places. It's that championship mindset and culture. It's also the fact that athletics brings us together. You can only do your best, not if you get accepted, but if you feel like you belong. It's different to be accepted versus feeling like you belong. This is the connective tissue. Athletics is a good example, right? Each of the campuses have hundreds of student organizations. Right? Those are essential. Those are transformative for the individual. Faster on degree completion, comprehensive approach to student health that wraps around them, physical health, mental health, dietary health, all the way around them. They're all listed in there. Career success, right? We're tracking placement rates. We're rapidly addressing through tutoring and mentoring initiatives to get those back on track that need it. College of Engineering is doing a brilliant job in this to make sure we have more students that come in that can be successful. Full suite of career services all the way around it. But the key to all of this is that our primary job is to make sure our students are not just minted for a job. They're minted for a career, and a career that will change, and to give them those skills that will allow them to flourish in a rapidly changing society, most recently hit by artificial intelligence, and to see the opportunity in that. to have a worldview, so it involves things like study abroad. Again, all measures for each one of these. I could go on, but let's hear from one of these great products. I've come to know an individual who is our second in a row. We're hoping for a third in a row. Truman Scholar. Let's see a video on Juan Dills.
I grew up in foster care and in group homes, and eventually going to prison for 7 years, and then getting out, and eventually found out a different way, and overcame some of my struggles. This is one of the places where I was able to be honest and really be myself and not be judged. I have had so many opportunities with professors to spend time with me that's helped me, offered me to do research and to find out, to really show my potential and shine. I never knew that education could give you power and influence. And I'm here today, I hope that I can influence and empower others to change. After winning the Truman, I fell straight to the floor. It's just a blessing to say without words. I can't even bring the words to light. And I'm so grateful to just be in that class of the finalists, or just have the opportunity just to be at my university. It's just, individuals like me don't make it to places like this, and they're able to tell their story. University of Oklahoma has really helped me. They helped me excel into a better person today, and I can't thank you enough.
Juan is here. Juan, would you stand so we can recognize you? Proud to know you. All right, we are going to get done on time, which is 11:30, so we're going to have to go a little bit faster, so keep it down, and we can get through this. I think the problem's been you, not me. There's so much in this. Third pillar, we're going to ascend. I've always wanted to do that. We're going to ascend. Do you all see the ascension? All right. This is one, Ascend is one OU. This is the one that that I think people, when they get this, they get it. If you don't understand this, you're not there yet. And just so you'll know, I've spent so many hours with this strategic plan, but one university matters. The power is there. When you look at our campuses, when you look at OU Health, who is absolutely intertwined into us, we are one. When you look at all of those, we have not fully harnessed the power. 1 + 1 + 1 does not equal 4 if we do it the right way. This idea of separate campus identities and separate plans, it doesn't work. It's wasteful. The identity, when you think about the power of our campuses together, the excellence that comes from them. Here's a good example. Stevenson Cancer Center is an absolute jewel. There are 57 Norman campus researchers that are working for Stevenson. We have $16 million in NIH funding, at least before I stood up here. Of that $16 million in NIH funding, over half of that is directly related to Stevenson Cancer Center. So when we think about the idea that we're picking discrete areas of excellence, and we have picked discrete areas of excellence, we've got to realize that everything can thrive in that ecosystem of excellence. And that's just a good example. We've got to make sure that we're, of course, as efficient as we can be. Think about our shareholders, right? They're taxpayers who have no choice but to pay, and they're students, many of whom are borrowing the money. We've got to be as efficient as we possibly can, and there are big plans inside of this to make sure that we're putting every dollar where we can. We've got to make sure everyone feels they belong as part of a single purpose in a single university. And that's not just students. That's faculty and staff, and it's alumni, and it's our community partners. We've got to make sure it's understood that we're one ecosystem with a singular purpose, a single plan, and a single way of winning together. Again, this is one I could spend a lot of time on, but then I would never get to the end of this. This is a core component, and we've seen this. The OU Health merger is a great example of taking a separate hospital and clinical operation, a separate clinical operation inside of the College of Medicine for the ambulatory component, and all of it failing by itself, but together creating incredible power. Fundraising is another great example. We've got to control our own destiny in a way that works for the entire enterprise. Our move to the SEC is a great example of seizing control of our destiny in a way that moves the entire institution forward. All right, pillar 4. I hate moving on. We're lifting, aren't we? Is that what it says? All right. I guess I could turn around and look, but there's a lot of you that could just tell me. And I'm very worried about this Brittany setup. So, as a state, pick your study, but we're 47th or 49th in healthcare outcomes. It's not okay. We provide 80% of the healthcare workforce. We weren't serving the entire state. We were competing in Oklahoma City against a few others, and we hadn't distinguished ourselves as an academic health system. Now, this is where words matter. If you can't articulate what makes an academic health system different from a community healthcare system, then we're not there in terms of our education on why we're different. We're the only academic healthcare system in the state. What's the difference, right? We do teaching. We educate 80% of the healthcare workforce. We do research. Research is a massive part of this. And we do patient care. Here's how it works. Whenever you go to a community healthcare system, they can do a very good job. But they don't infuse the research. They don't have clinical trials. They don't have teams of subspecialists that works in groups across disciplines that address your problem. They can get to a point where they say, we can't help you. And that's where we step in as an academic health system. We're the ones you go to when they're out of answers because we don't stop searching for answers. Perfect example that I think illustrates this point. Stevenson Cancer Center. In this room, among all of us that are males, half of us will get diagnosed with cancer. Of the women, 1 in 3. Even with today's work, 35% of us, once we get that diagnosis, will die from it. If you go to Stevenson Cancer Center, one of the few NCI designated, which is a research designation for cancer treatment, our odds of living beyond 1 year are 25% greater immediately. Because you're bringing all of that specialty to bear. They don't look at all kinds of cancers. They're specialists in particular times. There are tumor boards. There are the latest protocols. There's clinical trials. Understanding what an academic health system does is essential for us lifting the health care of Oklahoma. It's not community health care. We're finally living into this. You probably saw, we will do this during this refresh of the strategic plan. We are finally going to Northeast Oklahoma. Right now, with our move to Norman, which picked up South Oklahoma, a lot of those folks won't go to Oklahoma City. We've gone from treating 1 in 6 individuals in Oklahoma who get diagnosed with cancer to 1 in 5, heading towards 1 in 4. But if you're in Northeast Oklahoma, because proximity matters so much to where you get your care, it takes a lot of time to go through chemo, to go through radiation, to have your surgery, so many visits. Less than 3% of those, not 1 in 3, but less than 3% of those in Northeast Oklahoma go to Stevenson. They're dying, they're suffering needlessly. We've made the commitment, and during this refresh of the strategic plan, we have already committed a $185 million investment to build Stevenson in Tulsa. It's going to save thousands of lives, right? It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, totally agree. So everything in this component is about driving that forward. We have 3 areas that are critical to us in the health space. It's cancer, it's diabetes, and it's neurosciences. Those will be our focal points for the next 5 to 10 years, and we're focused on it with incredible precision, and we're going to harness 1OU by bringing in the basic scientists, not just from Oklahoma City, but also from Norman and Tulsa, those that can actually help drive those kinds of outcomes. Here's just 2 more quick things we are going to do under this strategic plan that I think are absolutely stunning. In the next 5 years, we aspire to, and under our strategic plan, we will decrease the number of deaths from cancer in Oklahoma by 10%. And we will decrease the number of deaths in Oklahoma because of complications related to diabetes by 30%. That's a lot of lives saved. And that's in our strategic plan, and we're going to be accomplishing that. And we talk about subspecialty care. There's an amazing story. I've already had the chance to meet these individuals and to see the video that will come along with it. Let's hear from the families themselves. Let's please play the video on the pediatric heart transplant.
So we did not know about Parker's heart condition until about 30 minutes after he was born. So we had about almost a day to process what was about to happen, but we had been waiting so long. I think it was the 300th day in the hospital that he ended up getting his heart transplant, so we were ready.
First and foremost, David and Faith Helmrich are some of the most wonderful people I've ever met, and they were given the gift of Parker.
To give the gift of life to someone today, to be part of Dr. Burkhart's team while he does this today means more than I can put into words.
Sitting in the waiting room with our families, and Dr. Edens came into the waiting room and he showed us that Parker's heart was beating.
Yeah, no, I think it's a huge day for the Children's Hospital and for the state of Oklahoma.
The staff here is amazing, and it would not have been the same experience without them, because they became our family and our friends.
Just doing everything you can to move forward and just never give up hope. And strange thing to even think about because we've been here for so long, so we'll see what the future holds.
Faith, David, and Parker Helmrich. You all are incredible. Thank you all for being here. Parker, my man's a beast. Have you seen him? He's 15 months old, right? Yeah, and he's like 6'2". It's a really good heart they gave him. Part of the Blahnik collection. All right, I know we need to move here very quickly. I cannot do it justice in the time we have. But our 5th and final pillar is shaping the future through discovery, creativity, and innovation. This is what we do as a research university. We've talked about the 3 areas. of excellence that we have for the health side of the enterprise. In here, you see health, you see energy and the environment, you see aerospace, defense and national security, community and societal well-being, and weather. That's where we live. In this pillar, it is a cascade of those objective steps. We've already increased our research funding. I told you, 4th fastest in the country. We're now at $400 million in expenditures a year. We debated this one. We thought we should say within 5 years we'd get to $750 million in research expenditures. And a few people, one of our regents in particular, said no. Indicate it needs to be a path to $1 billion. So that's what we have. And I want you to hear very briefly from an individual a lot of us know, Dr. Amy McGovern.
I lead a $20 million investment from NSF, the National Science Foundation. It's something called an AI Institute. We were one of the first ones that were established, and they are established all across the nation. We're the only one in Oklahoma. It is a $20 million investment from the federal government in trying to develop advanced AI technologies, and ours is focused on AI for weather, climate, and coastal oceanography. AI is going to augment what we can do. AI is going to help us process the huge amount of information that's getting handed to us all the time, that we're in information overload, and it's going to help cut that down to here's what you really need to pay attention to, so that we can do something to say, well, there might be a hailstorm for you, not in the next 15 minutes is what the average warning time is, but you have about an hour to prepare for the fact that there's probably an 80% likelihood of 3-inch hail. Nobody's going to be able to stop the events, but if we can prepare for them better, then we can lower the impact of the events on everybody. OU is really well known for our weather research, and people see us all as the expert on that, and that's why there's an industry of weather that has sprung up around Oklahoma as well. By being a leader in one area, you're known for that area, and so you recruit grad students, you recruit more people, you recruit industry that's going to work with you, and you become really well known in that, and you become the people that are sought after in that. Funding the foundational research is really, really important, because that's what we're all doing here in academia. We're figuring out the new science and the new theories, and then some of them turn out to be something that just revolutionizes what we're doing. The research mission is all about advancing our fundamental understanding of the world, and we need to do that if we're going to continue to be leaders in science and technology. And so we need to keep protecting that, making sure that we're hiring new faculty that are full of new, exciting ideas, and bringing up the new leaders of the future for everything we're going to do in science and technology, because you don't know which idea is going to turn out to be the next really amazing one.
Dr. Amy McGovern couldn't be here, but we know she's always working tirelessly. So, I wish we had more time. We do not. That's assuming you can articulate the purpose here in a few minutes. So be thinking through what those 3 words were. That may be helpful. Hey, I just want to say, we only have so much time. Not just for this, but only so much time in the roles that we have. I've been able and blessed to be around here for 30 years. And I've gone from somebody that had no idea what took place with the staff in Oklahoma City to someone who's had a chance to get a front row seat to the difference that it makes. And I promise you, every single one of you matters. The we in We Change Lives, that's the power of all of us. Not one of us, all of us. And the only way we can harness that power is by having a plan and a discipline and constantly measuring it. I'm so proud of what's been accomplished under the first step, the first 5 years of the Lead On University plan. Lives are better because of it. The next 5 years under this refresh, right, in every aspect, it's going to be incredible. Thank you all for being such a huge part of this. We have 2 steps left in this program. One is if we can articulate our purpose. What do we do? That's pretty strong. All right. So the way we're going to close, it felt like we needed to do something big to close this out. And we thought the university has been here since before statehood, right? 1890, 1907 was statehood. First president, David Ross Boyd, right? He had this big, bold spirit, talked about what possibilities. We thought that with the announcement and the launch of this strategic plan refresh, that we needed to conclude it with something as bold as that, which is to bring in the Pride of Oklahoma Marching Band. Let's bring them in.